Let me tell you something that will change your life if you let it sink in. The richest people in the world are 75% entrepreneurs, 15% investors, 7% inheritors of wealth, 3% athletes, entertainers, and artists, 0% employees who just earn a salary. So, if you want to know how to manage your money like the 1%, you have to understand what those first four categories have in common. So let's think about it. Entrepreneurs own businesses, investors own assets, rich kids own trusts. Finally, athletes, entertainers, and artists own rare skills. So it's clear, if you don't own something, you are what's owned. That's the secret most people miss. So how can you start owning things like the 1%? Well, you need to follow the 25-15-50-10 rule. The first 25% of your income should be going towards growth. This is the 25% that works for you. You see, when most people get their paycheck, they pay the bills and then blow the rest on useless things they don't even remember buying. This is exactly why 99% of people are trapped owning nothing of value. However, their money is mostly spent on food, shelter, and water. The only thing that has changed is the illusion of freedom. The idea is that while you're out working, these assets that you own are working for you in the background. Eventually, these assets could even make you more money than your day job. You might think you don't have enough money to invest in assets. However, you need to find the money, because the sooner you start, the better. Well, not exactly, because they were investing instead of just saving. If we assume an average annual return of 10%, which is the average return of the S&P 500 over the last 100 years, then the numbers start to look a little bit different. That's why you should start now, even if it's small, because waiting will cost you more than you think. But how can you actually get started? Well, step one is to select your growth assets. There are loads of ways to grow your money, but not all of them carry the same risk or reward. So I like to think of them as a scale from relatively safe and steady to high risk, high reward. At the lower risk end, we've got index funds. Honestly, this is where most people should start. You are not trying to pick winners. You are just buying a slice of the whole market, like the S&P 500 I mentioned before. You don't need to check charts or time the market. You just let it sit there and grow quietly in the background. Then there's real estate. That could be rental property if you've got the money, or REITs if you haven't. REITs lets you invest in real estate without buying a property. It's kind of like buying a small share in a building with a bunch of other people. Unlike stocks or property, no one can take it away from you. However, it does take more time to learn, and that's why it's higher up the risk scale than the other two. Then, we get to individual stocks. I know it's tempting to try and pick the next Tesla, but unless you've done your homework and you really know what you're doing, you're basically just guessing. So if you're going to do it without learning the specifics, keep it small and treat it like a hobby, not your main strategy. And right up the top is alternative investments. I've played around with some of these, but I never risk more than I'm willing to lose. These are your moonshots. Fun to try, but not where you build long-term wealth. So now you know what to invest in. Now we've got to talk about how to invest. Because if you're doing it through the wrong kind of account, you could be handing over thousands in unnecessary tax without even realizing it. That's why step 2 is to set up tax-advantaged accounts. Right, let me show you the smart way to legally save as much money as possible. Before we dive in, remember, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just sharing what I've personally done over the years. Okay, let's start with the UK. One of the best options is the Stocks and Shares ISA. You can invest up to £20,000 a year. and anything you earn is tax-free. You can set one up on platforms like Trading 212. All you have to do is select the stocks and shares ISA when you sign up. You can also invite your friends, and once they fund their accounts, you'll both get a free fractional share. If you are working a 9-to-5, you've probably got access to a workplace pension. Usually, you'll put in 5% and your employer will match with 3%. That's basically free money. You don't pay any tax on the money it earns while it's growing. You only pay tax when you take it out later on. If you're in the US, your setup's a little bit different. The Roth IRA is one of the best accounts you can open. You invest money you've already paid tax on, but every penny it earns grows completely tax-free. And when you retire, you can take it out with zero tax. The limit on this account is $7,000 a year if you're under 50. Even billionaires use this account. Peter Thiel, one of the guys behind PayPal, reportedly turned his Roth IRA into over $5 billion. He did this by investing in early-stage, high-growth companies, including PayPal and Facebook, which then increased value significantly. Then there's the 401k, which is basically the US version of a pension. The money you put in comes out of your paycheck before tax. It also grows over time without being taxed while it's invested. And if your employer offers a match, definitely take it. The problem is, lots of people open up these accounts, put their money in every month, and don't actually invest in anything. That brings us onto step 3. Actually, start investing. All right, so now you've picked your growth assets, and you've set up your account. Whether you're on Trading 212, Vanguard, or something else, is try to actually put your money to work. The best thing you can do is set up a monthly transfer that goes straight from your bank account into your investment platform, ideally on payday. That way you never even see the money sitting in your account and get tempted to spend it. The first fund is normally a US stock index fund, which basically invests in lots of US-based companies like Apple and Amazon, for example. The second fund is an international stock index fund, which is similar to the US-based one, but instead covers companies outside the US. And the final fund is something called a bond fund, which helps provide stability, as they're generally less volatile than stocks and can help smooth out the ups and downs of the market. For our US stock market fund, let's search for the S&P 500. This Vanguard one should do nicely. If you're based in the US, then you can also pick the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund, known as the VTAX. This fund is like owning a tiny piece of 500 of the biggest, most famous companies in America, like Apple, Amazon, and Coca-Cola. By the way, look out for the terms accumulation or distribution in the brackets. Personally, I always go with accumulation, as it reinvests your dividends back into the stock automatically. Then let's go and search for our next one, which is our international fund. For this, let's select iShares, MSCI World, UCITS ETF with the ticker IWDA, and tap Add to Pie. This fund is like having a collection of companies from all around the world. This fund is like lending money to the US government. They promise to pay you back with a little extra, which helps you keep your money safe and steady, even if stocks go up and down. If you prefer a slightly less risk, but still want a chance for high returns, then a slightly less aggressive approach might suit you better with around 80% in stocks and 20% in bonds. Don't get put off by the terms aggressive. It's all down to your age. As a general rule of thumb, the older you are, the more bonds you should have. So let's make the S&P 500 60%, the iShares World Fund 30%, and the Bond Fund 10%, and click Next, and then Auto Invests. This value projection is really awesome, as it shows you how much money you could make based on historical averages. Of course, When you invest, you can get back less than you invested, as investments can rise and fall. But it's still a great way to get an idea of how much you could make based on data-backed projections. Once your investing is automated, your job is simple. Stop fiddling and go and make more money. Because the truth is, the people who build wealth aren't the ones picking the fanciest stocks. If you haven't yet, learn something valuable. Do it as a side hustle, bring in more cash, then feed it straight back into your investments. The next 15% of your income should be going towards stability. This is the 15% that keeps you in the game. I didn't grow up around money, so when I turned 18 and needed a car to get to work, I didn't have any savings set aside, so I did what most people do. I took out a loan and bought myself a solid little German whip, a VW Golf. I even got a new stereo with the extra cash the bank gave me, and for about 3 months I felt like I was on top of the world. Then out of nowhere, the engine blew up. I had no backup, no safety net, and no clue what to do. And on top of all this, if I didn't get the car fixed, I'd lose my job. So I borrowed even more, which piled on more debt, more pressure, and more stress. To me, that car didn't just break down. It broke my finances, and it set me back a whole year. If I just had 15% tucked away for stability, I'd have been in a completely different position. Most people don't have a money problem. They have a stability problem. One unexpected bill, and it all falls apart. Even if you are investing, you'd be forced to sell your investments at a bad time, which may lead to a loss. That's why you need a margin for error built into your life. Let's get into how you do it. Step 1 is to calculate your stability fund. To do this, you first need to list out your core expenses. These are things like your groceries, rent, utilities, transportation, and any essential services like your internet connection, which you might need for work, not for Netflix. All of those things combined should give you a total. That number is called your monthly baseline. Let's say that adds up to $1,500 per month. Now, take that number, multiply it by 5 months. This will equal the ideal stability fund that you should be aiming to save. So in this example, that should be $7,500. So each month when you get your paycheck, 15% of your wages should be going towards building up this figure. Firstly, it must be easy to access. This money should be available within 24 hours max, so don't lock it up in some account that penalizes you for withdrawing early or won't let you touch it for 5 years in return for a bit more interest. The same goes for crypto, long-term bonds, or anything else that's meant to grow over years. Thirdly, it must always earn. Although this isn't your growth pot, that doesn't mean it should sit in a dead-end account doing nothing. You want it somewhere that earns a bit while it waits without any risk. This is because if you leave it somewhere with 0 interest, then it will be eaten away by inflation as money gets less valuable over time. Most people think it takes years to scrape together a decent stability fund, but if you play it smart, it doesn't need to take anywhere near that long. When I was building up my savings, I used 3 tactics that stacked on top of each other. Using them all together helped me really accelerate how fast I could save. Tactic 1 is called the paycheck sweep. This is when you take 15% of your income the second it lands and move it straight into your emergency fund.